Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Phat Muscle Project Podcast. I'm John Gorman, one of your hosts today. We got Lisa Franz in the house. Lisa, it has been a minute or 8 months. How are you?
I am really well, and I'm actually super, super excited for this recording today. I was saying selfishly, I'm excited that we're bringing these back because I feel like I haven't been completely on the pulse of what's been going on for you, and there have been so many changes since our last recording in August. So I'm super pumped to hear more about it.
Man, it's May now, and we didn't record since August, but there's a good reason. We're going to clue everybody in on that. We also have a really good Q&A lined up that you and I are going to go through and crush four really good questions. But I guess the first thing is, why did we take a break? Well, a lot of things happened. So I'll just go through them quickly. Right around September, we were supposed to be recording. I messaged you. I'm like, hey, we got to put these on hold. And I had to put Elite Physique University with Jason Theobald on hold as well, because I was in negotiations with New Ethics to buy in and become one of the owners, which I ended up doing. So all of that was going on. At the exact same time, quietly behind the scenes, I was working on buying my manufacturing company that makes our fat muscle products. So that had actually been going on and I couldn't say anything. So now there's two businesses that I'm buying into, one I'm completely buying as the owner. That was going on. So there's this thing called due diligence where you're looking at P&Ls and you're looking at all the numbers and you're making sure this is good and who's going to stay on board. And it was a lot. Like it was really, really a lot. And as I was doing this, now October, November's rolling around. As I'm doing this, we need to move our Fat Muscle headquarters. So all this is like hitting all at the same time. And we were in like a 2,000 square foot office, which you can do a lot of business out of a 2,000 square foot office. And we found this place that I'm in now. Lisa, you've been here because you were here at the Phat Muscle Academy. This place is huge. So between this place and what we call Synergy Labs, our manufacturing company, we have close to 20,000 square feet for manufacturing and for storing products and all that stuff. So we went from like 2000 to like almost 20,000 with all the stuff combined in like a short amount of time. Um, and then on top of that, we also had the Phat Muscle Academy, which we had all of our speakers, and that was a record sellout. Like we sold that out with 100 people and just a ton of good speakers. And like my eyes are already starting to glaze over thinking of all the different things that happened since then.
Don't
And then
forget,
in the
you also linked up with Premier U. That's another one,
meantime,
right?
another one, we started Premier U Telemed. So like now, I've got my own medical clinics partnered up with Brandon Williams and Greg Hendrick. And we've got an awesome NP, Jordan. She was on our panel up at the Fat Muscle Academy. So yeah, there's that business, right? So I started a YouTube video with my son Gavin, and it's called The Outwork Era. And I've got two episodes up, and it goes behind the scenes of doing all the things that I just talked about. So, like, we're getting these things up and going, and we're just trying to capture it all because someday I'm going to be old and I'm going to wish I could go back and see what happened as this whole thing just exploded. So, in the meantime, there was no time for podcasts. Like, I would have just been mentally like dead. And by the way, I'm still so busy, but you and I got together and we're like, all right, hey, listen, we need to make people better. We need to be better. Like, let's educate, let's get these podcasts going. We're getting tons of questions sent in all the time. So we are back today. So that's me. What about you?
Well, I have been up to a bit as well, but nowhere near as much as you. And more so on the personal front, I moved from Colombia to Bolivia because I had some visa issues in Colombia. So now I thankfully have a 3-year visa for Bolivia and can kind of make
Nice.
that my base for now, which feels really nice after over 6 years of like nomading around and not really having a quote unquote home. I can finally like have own more than a suitcase and a half, which feels
Mhm.
really
Yeah.
good too. And apart from that, in terms of training and like health-wise and everything else, it's been going so well. We were saying before we had record that I did go through a bit of a cut last summer, like basically from May until August, just trying to lean out a little bit for the summer in Germany and pretty much been maintaining a reasonably lean lifestyle, lean sort of physique since then. And I continue to feel good because, yeah, like to your point, I mean, people do notice, oh, okay, there's some visible abs. And often if we think, okay, female with visible abs, that often means is she losing her cycle? How healthy, how sustainable is that really? But like
Yeah.
truthfully, I'm maintaining very nicely somewhere between like 2,000, 2,200 calories, regular cycle, sleeping well, and it's giving me enough energy to like run my business well. I've been quite focused on my own podcast, bringing out 2 episodes per week, having amazing guests on, like Bill Campbell as well, one of the speakers that
Yeah.
we had at the Phat Muscle Academy, and like he asked me for the second time to contribute to his research review as an expert essentially, and like really little wins like this, they bring me so much joy and just yeah, I love connecting with other people in the industry that way and just continuing to learn and grow from that from there on.
Yeah, you're crushing it. So just on the physique side, like I was telling you before we recorded, people message me all the time. They're like, "Is Lisa competing? Like she about to step on stage?" I think an interesting topic. I don't know if we've covered body fat set point, but I think that would be a really cool topic to talk about because it's different for everyone. And people really need to find out what that body fat set point is. So maybe we should mark that down as a future episode and we can talk about that in our experience because we've got experience not just ourselves with all of our clients. I think that would be a good one.
Yeah, no, I'm absolutely putting that on the list, and we have so much great stuff coming up, like from various guests that we're going to have on again, like people like Bill Campbell or Jason Theobald potentially coming on, all the way to great topics that we want to speak about, everything physique enhancement, obviously. I personally, this is not an idea from you, but that was my idea. I wanted to hear more about like what new products are coming out. You just dropped the summer line, which I'm so excited
Yeah.
about. Like all these flavors sound super, super cool. And again, like I think it's amazing that you are like the least salesy person I know, but I still think the listeners are always super keen to know like, oh, what are they keeping the same flavors? Are we bringing out any like Halloween flavors again or so?
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, I think, if you're listening and you want to hear any topic that you think, like if you want to understand what goes into designing a new supplement line, for example, and you want to hear that, shoot us a message. Our emails are in the show notes. So we're down to talk about anything. So, but like Lisa said, I try not to be salesy. I try not to talk about supplements because everyone knows, we're part of Phat Muscle. But with that being said, what else do we have to talk about before we get into this Q&A that we've got
Well,
here?
I do want to talk about the Phat Muscle Academy. So essentially this year
Hmm.
it was in March, which I very much appreciated because it was not as cold as the year prior. It was still like I don't remember exactly, but like in the 40s in the morning, but then it was lovely weather like every afternoon
Yeah.
easily in the 60s. So I really enjoyed that, and I have to say, like for me, it was a different perspective this year since I wasn't presenting this year. I was just attending as an attendee, and that actually made it just as nice or just like very different because I got to fully soak it in. It was without pressure, and also since it was the second year that I had attended, it felt so familiar. Like the amount of people that just come up to you and are like, "Oh, Lisa, I remember you from last year," and it was just like family catching up. So I keep saying that I've been to several other like conferences or summits or whatever since then, or in between this one and the last one that we did. And the Phat Muscle Academy is truly exceptional because for me it feels very, very familiar. You always say like mom and pop, sort of like brought up from
Yeah.
grounds, and you can truly feel how much you care. You can feel how much each one of the presenters care. The venue is awesome. The food was awesome. So yeah, maybe tell us a little bit about your experience leading up to it, and of course on the days themselves.
Yeah, this was the first one that we've ever done where I was stressed out. And I've been doing conferences since 2015, like hardcore physique summit, Fat Muscle Academy, Elite Physique University, just numerous, 100 plus people, 150 plus people. And this one I was stressed out. And I think the reason is because I wanted everyone to be so happy. Where before I just showed up and I knew everyone was going to be good, but we've kind of taken everything to the next level the last 6 months. And it actually got to me a little bit. Now, when I say stressed out, it doesn't mean it was a bad thing. I was just very, very like I couldn't take in a lot in the moment. I really need somebody to host these things, but I'm a good host because I know everybody because I bring them in. So it's one of those catch 22s where my mentor Monty was there and he walked up to me as I was standing at the podium and we were about 10 minutes out from starting. He goes, "Hey man, just try and like soak this in as much as you can." And I was like, "I can't." Like I can't. Like I'm thinking about, is everyone happy? Is the food ready in time? Like those kind of things. And that just goes with hosting it. However, I completely loved it. It was the best year that we've ever had with any of our conferences. And like you said, it was like a family reunion. And going forward into next year, we're going to move it to July. So it's going to be in the summer. So that way we don't have to worry about any kind of cold or anything like that because it could still snow here in March. But we are going to have it. And I'm almost 99% sure it's going to stay in Springfield, Missouri. And we're going to try and move to a different venue so we can actually open it up to more people because we sold it out at 100 and looking to bring in some pretty good names. I tried to bring in some really big names, but man, the amount of money that some of these people charge these days is insane. Like Huberman is like $250,000 to bring him in. And I love y'all, but I'm not going to pay $250,000
Well,
to bring
to be
Huberman
honest,
in.
for me, it was amazing, like meeting Bill
Yeah.
Campbell, Lauren Conlon, again, like getting to know some of the staff from Premier U and just learning more about the company there, Jason Theobald. Like, I think you truly had a wonderful lineup, and then on like sprinkled in there even, someone like Renee or like people like from
Yes.
the family, kind of like sharing their experiences with what they've been up to, what they have created, amazing things as well. So yeah, I truly like it, and I personally like it to that it is in Missouri and that you plan to keep it there. I've been to several other conferences like in Vegas and stuff, and it just takes away the attention from what it's
Yeah.
supposed to be like. Like, because then you have people leaving early to go and play at the casinos
Right.
or whatever. And like, I don't blame them because it might be their first time there and it might be something really special. But I personally just enjoy that it's literally all that it is about is like the community, the content of the presentations, training together, the food, and that's it. And it
Yeah.
doesn't like it, you could, in my opinion, we could put that anywhere in a bubble and just isolate it. It doesn't matter the exact location. So yeah, I truly enjoy it there.
I'll say this and then we can get on to the Q&A because I'll talk about the academy all day long. Um, if you're listening and you want to get better, we've said this numerous times. You and I both have said this numerous times after we've been to conferences on this podcast in the last couple of years. If you want to get better, go to in-person events because it's a lot different than listening to a podcast. It's a lot different than taking a Zoom class. Like you get to actually be in a room full of people that are driven like you are. And I'm telling you, there are very few people that are driven like we are that are on this podcast and listening to the show. And sometimes this journey gets lonely. You don't have a lot of people. Your husband or wife may not care about any of this stuff. And you might have one or two friends. Well, imagine being in a room full of 100 people who are good people that are all fascinated to hear from Bill Campbell or to hear from Jason Theobald and go out and train together and meet new people. And if you're quiet and don't like to talk and meet new people, that's okay too. It's okay. You're still in that environment and you come back charged up, hungry, and you've learned a ton and you just get better. And you just can't beat it. So, with that being said, look for this to be in next July. It'll be our 10-year anniversary. So, I'm definitely going to be going all out. There'll be some special stuff given away.
Amazing. No, that'll be absolutely cool. And I couldn't agree more on the in-person thing and how long of a way that really goes. Even if it might seem like an investment up front or you're like, oh, I can watch the recording of this and that later on. It's not the same thing. So
Which we will have. Those are now done literally as of yesterday. The recordings are done. So I will have those later in May. I'm going to have those up. So people that couldn't attend, you're going to be able to buy those and watch them. And they're professionally done. Awesome
very
presentations.
cool.
People will be able to buy these. So yeah.
Awesome. Cool. Well,
Well,
let's
I'm
get
going to
into
crack this open. I'm going to crack this open. Hopefully
this.
we can hear that on there. I've got a Cranium energy drink from our good friends over at Cranium. before we hit this Q&A. So I need some caffeine in me.
That you can answer them well fueled, I have no doubt. Well, we've got
Yeah.
four great questions lined up. And as John was saying earlier, if you are listening to this and you have your own questions, whether it pertains to your own physique enhancement or development or your clients or whatever, please send us your questions. We love answering them. The first one I want to kick off with is, what is stubborn belly fat? Can you explain what that actually means and what are the best ways to lose it? I mean, it seems like a really straightforward question, but yeah, you go ahead, John.
Okay. Well, and just stubborn fat in general, right?
Oh,
A
yeah.
lot of people think of belly fat, and unfortunately, that's a buzzword on YouTube now. So, like what I learned making YouTube videos, if you put certain words in the title, buzzwords, they show up, and you see all these people using how to get rid of belly fat, and it's like, and they're people I'm friends with. I'm like, man, why are you guys going that route? But anyway, stubborn fat is something that we need to break down and understand what it is. Let me tell you what it's not. Stubborn fat is not, let me say, maybe you're a guy and you weigh 300 pounds and you get down to 220 pounds and you think, man, this is the stuff. It's my body fat is stubborn. It's not coming off. That's not really quote unquote stubborn fat. That's when you're stalled out and your body just doesn't want to lose body fat, period. So we need to differentiate from that. There's a difference between stalling out and stubborn body fat. Stubborn body fat to me is, well, and Lisa, you've experienced this, right? Even though, somebody looked at your pictures, it's not really stubborn body fat, but you get to a point to where you get so lean, you have the areas on your body that hold fat more than other areas. So for like women generally, for most it's hips and glutes, right? Hamstrings, hips, glutes, quads, lower half, right? For guys it can be a mix, but generally it's upper body. For me it's like in my abdominal region. And you hit that once you get to a point to where you've dieted off all the fat that comes off pretty easily, but then your body is in a stress state. It doesn't want body fat to be lower. Hormones start to tank. That's the quote unquote stubborn fat. Bodybuilders go through this as they diet to stage. We go through that last 4, 5, 7, 8 pounds that become very, very tough. And there's different ways to break those stalls and to get rid of that stubborn fat, but essentially that's what it is. Now, did you run into any of this on your last diet that you went down to last August?
No, not specifically, because as you mentioned, like I already started from a point of being pretty lean, and I'm like I would say that genetically, I'm probably also rather fortunate that like my fat distribution is pretty equal. So like I'll have the same tiny amount on my arms as on my legs, and it's not like one spot or one area. Like many of my clients, they're like, this has always been my problem area. This has always been the place that I lose weight last. And I've never had anything like that. So I do think there is a genetic component to that. And what I often hear is like, oh, can I spot reduce? Like I want to get rid of that fat on my arms. I want to get rid of the fat on like my thighs or so. Unfortunately, I will say that is not possible. Our body usually, like again, the genetic component there is where your body wants to let go of the fat last. You mentioned the very common areas. Most of the time, it is also like lower belly because that's where our organs are. So our body wants to like protect that area even more, and that'll be like some of the last things to go. But yeah, what would be your strategies to get rid of that stubborn fat?
So typically, you'll see stalls and stubborn fat go hand in hand when cortisol is really high. So, like when someone's been dieting a long time, their sleep's a little bit lower, or maybe they are doing things that are just extremely stressful in life, right? So, like when cortisol is chronically high, that's going to make those last areas hard to go. My first thing, and I tell people this all the time, sleep as much as you can. You have to sleep like a pro, sleep like it's your job, because people will track their diet to a T, they'll work out and do cardio to a T, they'll schedule everything around it, but then they'll try and get by on 6 hours of sleep a night. And you can't, because cortisol just stays sky high. And when cortisol is high, blood sugar and insulin stay high in turn, and it's going to make losing that last bit harder. So, what do you have to do? you have to drop calories even more and add more cardio, which raises cortisol even more. People just need to fix the sleep and the stress, right? So that's typically the first thing that I have people do is they have to combat that. There's other things you can do, like take a diet break, take a break from dieting, but be very strict. Add your calories up, maybe add 50 to 100 carbs or whatever. That's 200 to 400 calories, which you're not going to gain fat from as long as you're tracking perfect. Cut your cardio down. So we've talked about that stuff in other podcasts. But mostly it's getting cortisol and stress down. And here's the thing, if you're getting on stage, this is an important thing to worry about. If you're not getting on stage and you're the dad like me, that you have stubborn love handles, for example, on your low back, don't worry about that, because if you feel good and the rest of you looks good, don't chase that. You're going to have that body fat set point, which is something we'll talk about more in the future. You're going to have that area to where if you try and chase that off, it's probably going to come back. So unless you're stepping on stage, it's not something to worry about. So people just need to know the differences. Now, there is one supplement out there, and we don't put it in any of our products because for some reason the insurance companies do not like it. Like they do not want us carrying yohimbine HCl. And it's a very interesting product. It's kind of old school. Like we used to take it way back in the day. But it helps with fat areas that have very little blood flow, and it helps open up those A2 receptors, right? So like females, especially, if you start off by taking, I think it's 2.5 milligrams, it's been a bit, one cap a day, basically. You start taking that when insulin's low, it can help with those A2 receptors in those low blood flow areas, like lower body, right? It's not something that's going to be a cure all. There is a little bit of anxiety that comes along with the Yohimbine HCl. The first time I took it, I remember taking it and I was driving home from the gym, and I felt like, how you have that real bad anxiety, like in the pit of your stomach, like something bad's about to happen. Like we've all felt that, right? It's anxiety. So it was artificial anxiety. I didn't love that feeling. It went away after 2 to 3 days of taking it, but just know that's typical. I just don't know very many companies that put it. It's not Yohimbine. Um, it's not Yohimbe. It's Yohimbine HCl. So I think there's still places like Prima Force used to make it. There's places people can get it. You can try that. So if you're in prep, that's an option.
It's super interesting. I guess to your point of that driving more blood flow into those stubborn areas, while we can't spot reduce what I was saying earlier, I do think that sometimes like those particular areas, if we're targeting them more with our strength training, even just from a perception point, it makes us feel like we're working on that more and getting a little bit tighter around that area. So if someone does say like, oh, can I spot reduce by putting in more crunches? Well, not really. You're just building, a stronger core and accentuating your abs more. But from your feeling here, it's going to drive more blood into that area too. So to your point, it could assist in a little bit of a backwards, indirect, or very small way.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. Decent topic. We could probably do a whole podcast on it, but I think that's pretty much the gist of it.
Awesome. Cool. Let's move on to the next question. And that one is, I've heard you talk about training body parts twice a week to max out growth. Is there a place to do this 3 times a week to max out growth?
Yeah, so this is something to where, and Lisa, you've got a CrossFit background. So what I'm about to talk about, you know better than most people, right? We know if you're trying to put on muscle, if you train, say, chest twice a week, like Monday and Thursday, you're going to max out your growth there. That's much better than just training chest and a ton. Like if you trained a ton of chest on Monday and just Monday, you're missing out on spiking that growth again on Thursday. It doesn't matter how much you train on Monday, your chest is done growing by Thursday. Like I don't care if you did 100 sets, it's done growing, right? It's a time thing. So you want to do enough to grow and recover on Monday, and then enough to grow and recover on Thursday. And if you think about that over the course of a year, if you go from training chest once a week to twice a week over the course of the year, you've literally doubled your chances to grow. So, and we all know that, right? That's not new news. So, probably 15 years ago, this thing called DUP came to everyone's attention. It's called daily undulating periodization. Why it's called that, I don't know. I don't even like saying that word because people are like, why do we have to give things weird names, right? All that means is you change your rep ranges each time you train, right? So like maybe you do a chest workout in the 10 rep range and then the next time you do it in the 15 to 20 rep range, right? It's you change it up. So that came about, but with that came the idea that you should, if you want to grow your legs, for example, you should squat 3 times a week. And they started to combine these different training modules, like, kind of like a powerlifting, bodybuilding type split. And we saw a lot of people squatting 3 times a week to bring their legs up. There's a lot of things that people need to understand when you do this. Will you grow in the beginning? Yes, you can grow extremely fast because it's a new stimulus. You have to make sure you're eating a ton and you're recovered. So you can get by with that for a short amount of time. However, here's the problem. And this comes back to other training programs that I'm not a fan of, for staying healthy in your joints and tendons, such as CrossFit, for example, or anything you train body parts numerous times a week. Your joints and tendons take 4 to 5 days to recover. The muscle takes 3 days to recover. So if you say you squatted 3 times a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, by the time you're squatting on your third day, your joints are just so beaten up and so tore down, they're never recovering. They're actually going backwards. Well, what happens when you do that over time, over the course of years? That's where injuries happen. People are overusing their body parts and their joints and tendons' ability to recover. So just a big fan of twice a week, like I said, Monday and Thursday. And even then, you've got to be careful because by Thursday, your joints and tendons may not be 100% recovered, but it's a lot better than doing it 3 times a week. So I'm just not a fan of it. If you're dieting and you're in a deficit, never, like never, never, never. And I'm talking about it. You could do it. Let me back up here. You could do this in a different fashion. And Lisa, you may do this with some people too. I don't know. I'd be curious to get your take. I have people that train upper, lower, upper, lower. So 4 days a week, they're hitting upper twice, lower twice. And if they want to do a fifth day, I have them do a high rep, light, full body workout. And it's generally not for very many people that are trying to put on muscle and they're dieting. But I have those higher rep ranges in there. It's not heavy, heavy training. I have done that, even though if I had to do it all over again, I probably would get away from that split, that upper, lower, and then a full body. It's just something that I had a lot of beginners do at some point in time. I probably wouldn't do that, but I know some people will train like full body 3 days a week because like Monday, Wednesday, Friday, because that's what they want to get in. I'm not a huge fan of that because again, you're still at some point going to be under recovered, but I'd be curious to see what you've done with your clients and yourself.
Well, I think we always have to consider like what smart programming. So, I mean, we can have a good training split on paper, in terms of just body part splits, but we can also, I have seen some decent full body 3 times per week or even more training splits as well. Let's just say if someone had two heavy lower body days per week and then on one or two of the other days it would be more like balance work, it would be more mobility, coordination, that type of stuff. I think that can absolutely work, especially if your target is like longevity and functionality and all that, but we're talking about hypertrophy training here more than anything, right? So obviously the research does kind of say that in the end, it comes down to the weekly volume that we have in terms of our sets. But what you were saying earlier is if we try to cramp that all into just one session per week, again, let's take legs, your legs are going to be so ruined by the end of that, I don't know, 2 hour session or whatever. You're very unlikely to lift the same amount of weight that you would lift if you split that into two. And on that
Yeah.
second day, you'd be a lot fresher for that last exercise and you would be able to push it harder. So technically, your volume would be higher and you would be able to progress more over time. I do think there's also a lot of individual variability. So we need to look at how experienced is that person because we truly want to find the minimal effective dose that works. So if someone is reasonably new to training, they are going to see progress with even just hitting a body part once a week or twice for sure. If you're like, oh, I'm kind of stalled out, I want to push a little bit further. Can I do 3 times per week? Yeah, give it a go, but make sure you're keeping an eye on how well you're recovering from that, also from a central nervous system point of view. And let's just take legs again as an example. I wouldn't say like squat 3 times per week. I would say like maybe that third day could just be a lot of isolation work. I have yet to see a person that gets really, really fatigued from doing a lot of abductions or, like things like that. That is very unstressful for the central nervous system for the most people, and you can still achieve quite a bit with that. So I think it always has to be a little bit more nuanced.
Yeah, I guess my final thing is if you're trying to grow and put on muscle, do the most that you can while you can recover. And this sounds so generic, right? Without trashing your joints and your tendons.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Like see how much you can get by and you feel it out, And there's so many other things that go into this, right? Like if someone's natural, your recovery ability is much, much less than if someone's on testosterone replacement therapy. And for those few that are out there who are using everything under the sun, they're getting a black market, whatever. I don't care. That's up to you. I'm not going to judge. The recoverability for someone using a ton of anabolics, well, they could probably, if they need to bring a body part up fast over the course of 12, 16 weeks, you want to bring your legs up quick, yeah, you could because your medicine cabinet's a lot different than somebody who's natural, right? So like so many things go into play there. So many
Yeah.
things. So good question. Yeah.
Awesome. Cool. Let's move on to question number three, which is, should I count the protein in sources like oatmeal, peanut butter, pasta, etc.? And do they count as decent protein sources?
Well, I'm sure, I mean, you're a nutritionist, so I'm sure you've been asked this a ton of times. I have as well. So I've got my bro take on this, and I'll be curious to get your professional opinion on this. But things like oatmeal, peanut butter, whole wheat pasta has a lot of protein in it too, for example, right? First of all, I tell my clients, yes, count everything because it's still calories. We still want to know what you're getting in. One of the things that I'm very aware of, though, is if someone isn't eating a lot of protein, specifically a female, maybe a female, I might have her eating 120 grams of protein a day, which is not low, but I have a lot of females that train really hard, trying to put on muscle. They're eating 150 grams a day, right? Most of the reason why I get them that high is because they're also counting the trace proteins in their oatmeal and their peanut butter and whole wheat pasta and bread, for example. Excuse me, those proteins sources in oatmeal, peanut butter, pasta, bread, stuff like that, the amino content that turns on growth is very low. So basically that's the leucine content. So if someone's eating a lot of carbs that have carbs and fats that have a lot of proteins in them, those proteins aren't very good for growth, right? So you have to get someone's total protein for the day higher. So if they are eating meat and they're eating eggs and chicken and beef and whey protein, for example, they're getting enough aminos that way. So I try to make sure, long way to answer this is if they're on a lower protein diet, like 120 grams, I usually have them supplement with essential amino acids. That way they get enough leucine in because I have my clients counting all of it, and it's a calorie at the end of the day. They're just not the best protein sources.
Yeah, I'm totally with you. I too have my clients count that the trace protein, so to speak. But again, like making sure they're pairing that with a higher protein source or more bioavailable protein source, like an animal protein. Ideally, if they're obviously more plant-based, then still let's see that we can complement that with some tofu or protein powder or whatever it might be. So I would certainly not say, is it a good protein source to that question? No, it's not. It does count as it does have amino acids, but not all the essential ones, and therefore we need to make sure we're complementing it with others. I sometimes get a similar question with regards to like net carbs or not net carbs. Should I be
Yeah.
tracking all carbs? And like, yeah, we should be tracking all carbs. Nonetheless, the carbs coming from sugar alcohols, they're very different, differently metabolized or not metabolized in your body. So we need to look at other carb sources as well around your training so that you're refueling properly. But
Yes.
yeah, I do think we still need to track all proteins.
Yeah, I think a perfect example, when you look at how much protein each person needs to turn on protein synthesis and growth, from a good protein source is generally for women 20 to 25 grams of protein seems to be about enough of things like, beef, eggs, whey, things like that, right? Fish. For guys, it tends to be 30 to 40 grams tends to be enough. If you're a larger individual, closer to 40 grams per meal. Well, here's an example. If I have a female who's eating a meal and she has 50 grams of carbs from whole wheat pasta, maybe there's ten grams of protein just from the pasta, which is not a good protein source. It's like hardly any amino content. So now she's going to add chicken to that. She's only going to get 10 grams of protein from chicken, right? Which is not going to turn on muscle growth very, very well. So in that instance, I also, like I said, supplement with essential amino acids so you get more in throughout the day and it helps turn that on. So is this something to where someone trying to lose 30 pounds and just look better, the mom of three that's trying to drop 30 pounds and just get back to feeling good about herself, just count your calories and don't typically worry about it too much, right? Let's start there. Like, let's not overcomplicate this. But if you're somebody that's been doing this for a while and you understand what we're saying and it doesn't hurt your brain, then definitely be aware of like there's a lot of things that have a higher protein content in them that are carbs and fats that maybe just bump your protein up a little bit more from the source that you add to it.
100% totally agree with you. Okay, so
Yeah.
last question. I have been thinking of using Trizepetide to diet, but I have actually no idea where to start, and my doctor isn't familiar. Could you shed some light on this and when to use it or not?
So these are very interesting fat loss meds, and you'll see, unfortunately, people ruin everything. So on social media, you'll see people bashing it, people hailing it as the next big thing or the greatest thing ever. Let me just explain to people tirzepatide's use and why I'm actually using it right now. I have a lot of clients that use it. So it's a very interesting GLP. And what it does is it blunts hunger, not really so much through digestion like semaglutide does, but it helps blunt hunger and it helps turn off what we call quote unquote food noise. So, like the really massive cravings that you get the longer you diet and the leaner you get, it helps shut that off. So, essentially, it makes dieting easier. And it does two things that are very healthy: it improves insulin sensitivity and it lowers inflammation, which a super inflamed body is a very sick, unhealthy body. And it's a very hard body to drop body fat on, right? So it does a whole host of things. And honestly, I've not seen any issues. Like, yeah, you're a little bit thirstier on it. So, like, if you don't drink enough water, you can get constipated. Like, this is rare, right? We're all drinking fluids, like the people that are serious about tracking their stuff, right? This is more for like, we see a lot of the side effects in people that are sitting on the couch eating potato chips, taking mega doses because their doctor has to keep them from dying because they're diabetic and insulin resistant, right? For people like us, we microdose it. So 12 units once a week is a very good microdose. You can take that once, or you can spread it into 6 grams twice a week. It was 6 milligrams twice a week, right? 6 units, sorry, twice a week. And it lowers inflammation down. It makes it to where you're not hungry and body fat just tends to fall off, not like fall off in huge amounts. It just becomes easy again because you also lower inflammation. You can use it for, I mean, you can use it for months. And the cool thing is when you're done, the hardest part about dieting isn't so much the dieting, it's when you're done. Because then when you start to add food back in, cortisol starts to drop, thyroid hormone picks up, and you get hungry and you don't have a reason to diet anymore. So it's hard not to just go eat extra food. If you keep this in for another month or so, it helps keep that hunger down. You can add your food in and not struggle so much with the food noise. So I'm a huge fan of it. We, of course, at Premier UTelemed, that the new business that we talked about earlier, all my clients that need it and elect for it, they use it. And it really has shined where I have people in that we talk about stubborn fat zone. I have people that have been dieting for a decently long time and they want to get that last little bit off, it really goes in there and helps with that. So I did a diet here because I have to diet every 4 to 5 months because of cholesterol issues and A1C and stuff like that because the meds I have to take. So I went and dieted and I thought, you know what? I'm just going to run. Everybody calls it TERS, so you don't have to say Trizepitide. I ran TERS 12 units a week, and I didn't change anything else. Left my calories right around 2,300. And I just wanted to see what would happen from the standpoint of if I left everything the same, I just added the med in, what would happen? Well, I dropped 8 to 9 pounds and I didn't change anything because it cleared up inflammation, lowered inflammation quite a bit, and it cleared up insulin sensitivity. Now, there are a couple other things I added to that methylene blue, which is, it helps recharge your cells and it gives you energy, but it helps lower inflammation as well. I paired those two together and felt great. So there's a time and a place for it. It's not to be demonized like a lot of people have seen. People say, well, the research shows that you lose muscle on it. That's because you have a bunch of untrained people using it. They're sitting on the couch, they're using mega doses of stuff, and they're not working out. Any dieting without working out, people will lose muscle. So when you train, you hold on to your muscle. So people like us, we don't have to worry about it. So I'm glad to answer any questions that people have on that. My email is in the show notes. Like I said, we cover the states of Illinois, Missouri, Texas, and Florida. So like we have lots of patients in those states that get taken care of. And I know Jason Theobald, my good buddy, he has Advanced Vitality, HRT.com. They basically cover almost every state. So like getting it is pretty easy. But you want to get it to where it's not coming to you in a set pin. You want to be able to adjust your own dose, right? So like just getting a vial of it. So either my clinic, Premier U, or Jason's, those are good places if you're interested.
Yeah, I think you're raising some really great points here. So first of all, the dosage, I do think like having the supervision, just simply going yourself and getting it and trying to dose or to decide your own dose is probably not a good idea for most people. And what I like the most that you said is that, hey, we need to be still addressing lifestyle. This is not supposed to be something that makes up for lack of sleep, for not training, for not hitting your protein. Everything, all the foundations need to be in place. And I've spoken to several professionals. I personally don't have any experience with it or don't have any clients that have experience with it. But I've spoken to Dr. Crystal Guevara from RP Strength. I've spoken to Dr. Nardolsky, Spencer Nardolsky, and people like that who have so many patients or people that they help with it, and they all say the same thing in regards to blunting the hunger, in regards to you do still need to address all the foundations and the negative research in the sense of like people bouncing back, yo-yoing back, gaining all the weight back or losing a lot of lean mass also really is exactly to your point. They're just taking that and eating way too little calories many times as well, not addressing anything else, and then stopping it from one moment to another without having an exit strategy, without having learned any of the habit things or mindset things related to it. So again, we always need to address the bigger picture, but I think you pretty much nailed it on the head there.
I'll say one final thing. In the bodybuilding world, we've got quote unquote research sites, right? Like where you can get research chemicals and you can get everything under the sun. I've never been a fan of places like that. You can get things like injectable L-carnitine there. It's cheaper. It's not tested. You don't know what you're getting. I've had numerous people tell me that their carnitine smelled like fish at one point, and like I don't trust any of these sites ever, especially, and that's one of the reasons why I want to start Premier Utelamed with my partners because we get legit injectable L-carnitine, which we all use. It's an amazing, amazing product to use. Anyone can use it. Natural bodybuilders can use it. It's just an injection. It's like people take B12 shots, right? So like things like that, Trizepetide falls in that window as well. Don't get it from the research sites. I've got clients that told me they got it from there and not their doc, and it didn't blunt their hunger. Well, that's because the shit's probably not all the way real or not real at all. So like just spend the time and get it from a doc or get it from somebody legit like me or Jason or some of our clinics. So I hate seeing people waste their money. Like I hate that. I hate that side of the industry. I hate the black market side. But anyway, I'll get off my soapbox. I know that's all of the questions that we have, but we've got some cool people coming up next, do you want to let everybody know who we've got coming on in the next few episodes?
Well, we are going to talk more about peptides and just in general the things that your friends at Premier You do. So we're going to have
Yeah.
Jordan, the nurse practitioner, on to get more of her insight. And she presented at the Phat Muscle Academy, and it was so insightful. So even I learned quite a bit. I definitely recommend tuning in for that. We're going to have Renee on, one of our coaches here. She's going to
Yeah.
drop some amazing bombs, and yeah, lots of other great guests lined up.
Yeah, super excited. Do we have Jordan, our NP? Is she on first or is Renee Schneider on first?
Jordan
Who's
is
next?
on first.
Yeah, and the cool thing about Jordan is, she is a women's health expert, but also with the guys too. So she handles a majority of my clients that I send, but also Brandon Williams, who we'll have on it at some point. And Renee is just awesome. Like she's a hell of an athlete. She's exploding as a coach, and she's one of the most successful business women that I know. So like she adds so with her own marketing agency, which is massive. She adds so much to all of these discussions that we're having. I'm really excited to get her on. So
Awesome. Well, I'm excited that we brought out this episode now that we're back to a good routine. And yeah, I'm looking forward to chatting with you again in a couple of weeks.
yeah, we'll be dropping these every 2 weeks. So for myself and Lisa, we will see you soon. Bye.